Well, thank you all for coming back. This panel discussion actually goes till 1600 Eastern time, but if we get finished early, we had a break afterward, and we'll just increase that break. So, for those of you in the audience and for my panelists, bring your questions in again. We've already reviewed some of the questions you've asked of all our panelists, so we'll try to bring those up. But feel free to ask the question again so it's fresh within our chat chamber for these incredible speakers that we've had this morning.
I've got a question for the panel. I know we've heard a discussion on the hybrid approach, kind of the Jaguar Porsche approach to ECMO. And I wonder how many people are in the US right now are taking that hybrid approach to ECLS in their hospital setting. I know I went to some institutions where, and I know this has been in the past, where they said, keep it simple, keep it stupid. But, you know, now it seems like we have gone to the next level. And I just want to know, and also, how does that affect the exam approach maybe in Jeff's world for ECLS? Because there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. To any panelist out there that wants to talk about that. Jeff, why don't you answer that?
Two comments. It is on the exam because it's important. And the second is in the simulation world, about a year and a half ago, we got a request from major institution to adjust our simulator to do hybrid ECMO. And that was the best request that we've been asked in the last 2 years. And to Dr. LaRusso's point, it's not easy to do it and it's not easy to simulate it. But we have a simulation of hybrid ECMO.
One of the questions that we had repeatedly asked during a couple of presentations is about the COVID ECMO patients. To bronch or not to bronch, and how often? I've been to some places where we have bronched every single day, and I've gone to some places where we've only bronched when medically necessary. So what is your opinion on this?
Sounds like a LaRusso question answer so far, and then the rest.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, can you repeat? I didn't hear very well.
I'm sorry. So do you bronch your COVID ECMO patients? And if you do, what is the frequency? Some places bronch every single day. Some don't bronch hardly at all. What is your protocol that you have at your hospital?
Yeah, I agree. I got it. No, I think that we just the direct one, not every day. No, necessarily we don't do it. We just do it on occasion if we feel that this is really necessary. To be honest, my very, very personal, let's say, opinion is that theoretically speaking, let's make this way a little bit more complicated. Theoretically speaking, would you do an echo every day to your patient? I would do every morning and every afternoon. And if I could do a continuous echo monitoring, I would be even happier. And why? Because again, the issue nowadays is that we rely too much about numbers. I think also the numbers change. I mean, look at lactates. Lactates, you can make a sample and you have, I don't know, 10. And then when do you do the next one? You could do the next one after an hour, after 10 minutes, or after 4 hours. But then my question is, if you do after 4 hours and you still have lactates at 10 or 12, why did you have to keep your patient 4 hours on lactates of 10 or 12? So why don't we go towards an online and continuous monitoring? So my reply would be, we should have all the replies at all time as much as we can. Of course, you can't do bronch at every minute, every hour, every morning or afternoon. Yes, but I think in the future, again, my monster car or monster or transformer ECMO would be that these patients will have an online lactate monitoring. They will have a continuous echo probe in their maybe in the esophagus or stomach, or outside, but with a very high tech and very high resolution echocardiography. So all the information should be given and provided continuously. So maybe not bronch, I would say, but a lot of more diagnostic information. Now we get them now and then, and I think we should have a continuous monitoring. Is that a reply, or is that too much complicated?
It's a great reply. Thank you.
Thank you.
But may I join the discussion about the bronchoscopy? Because I would like to add something more than monitoring. And I completely agree with Roberto, but I am always skeptical about bronch, especially in COVID patients as well, due to aerosols. And the second question is why we should need the bronchoscopy. And I believe, so there are some myths about bronchoscopy, and my opinion is, and I strongly believe that sometimes we do more harm with bronchoscopy than we will help, because this belief we remove the fluids from the lung with bronch. We also decrease the PEEP, and this is what we shouldn't forget, that we are moving this instrumentary into the patient. We performing suction about maybe 15 minutes, and all these effects of PEEP, which we achieved in the previous time, it's gone. So I would never recommend to perform bronch every day, and you may concern to perform bronch for of course diagnostic, to win some fluids for microscopy and microbiologic cytologic results. But we may remember that we always want to achieve open. We would open the lung, and sometimes prone position may be better to remove the fluids and to keep the lung open, and not to push the bronch every day. So this is what I would like to add to this discussion.
I totally agree with you, Justina. But again, we are looking like echo now, like bronchoscopy now, with the current tools, which are really bulky, which are really also maybe dangerous. The issue is that we have to go towards more sophisticated, more miniaturized, more efficient.
Yes.
That is, I agree with you that currently our current tools are not such that, as I said, echo, I would like to have echo continuously, but putting the probe of the transesophageal echo each time in the patient esophagus is a pain, not only for the patient, but also for the sonographer. So the issue is that we need to go more and more towards miniaturized, very reliable, high-tech, high-resolution imaging. And this would be, I guess, also for the lungs.
Excellent. Dr. LaRusso, your analogy with lactates, I guess I would question whether continuous would be that informative only because it seems like with lactate levels, you first go on, so you get that big push of lactate for washout, depending on how sick your patient is. You then have to wait for the liver to start functioning again if it's been dysfunctional to neutralize the lactates, but hopefully you're not seeing the lactates rise as you're on full ECMO at that time. So I'm not sure if that's possible to do.
I agree. But again, what is the safe time span between one and the second lactate level? Can you give a time frame by which you can say, okay, look, I am safe if I can see lactates going down or higher, or safe? What is currently the time frame for a second check? But at the same time, censorship, the sensors that we have now, if you talk to the industry, they have so many more opportunities than what we are using now actually in the everyday practice. And this is a little bit disappointing because they are thinking about going to Mars, and we are not really thinking how to improve our daily and our patient monitoring. That is a little bit provocative, I know, but it's like the Transformers,
Well, now that Dr. Payton is in charge at ELSO, maybe he'll get on their butts about that and get the stuff we need. I can't hear you, Dr. Payton. I'm not sure why. You're not muted. Yeah, go ahead and work on it. Akram, did you have something to add to that conversation, please?
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Actually, I agree with Dr. Swirl comment about with the current technology, sometimes doing frequent bronchoscopies on those patients, it's actually traumatizing and might cause, more injury. Now, the second point about prone positioning on ECMO, she is absolutely right. There are more and more evidence actually coming out about the benefit of proning those patients early on, and with the COVID-19 consortium, ECMO card, essentially, we're doing currently analysis for proning on ECMO, and we've seen very strong signal about the benefit of proning when it comes to survival in those patients. So, completely in agreement. And of course, with Professor LaRosso about his comment about continuous monitoring, we hope that we can get to the point in the future that we will be able to continuously monitor those patients, so we can understand more about the physiology and the heart-lung interactions and other interventions we conduct in the ICU. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Payton.
Is this better, Bill?
You're on.
All right. So thank you, and thank you, Roberto, because I think you bring up a really good point. And it's this concept of we need improved monitoring for all of these patients. You were talking about lactate, but I think really if we take a step back from that, what we really need is good monitoring of both oxygen delivery and consumption for these patients. And we're using lactate obviously as a marker of that, but we need to find a way where we can continuously monitor those things. Whole lot easier on cardiopulmonary bypass where you're capturing the entire output of the system. So we need some combination of sensors that can help us with both native cardiac output as well as our mechanical cardiac output, so that we can get an idea of what delivery is and then be able to look at consumption and be able to aim for that. We're not there yet, but you're absolutely right. This is the place where industry needs to go and where we need help from our engineering colleagues to be able to translate some of this stuff back to the bedside.
I cannot agree more.
On that note, Dr. Swoll, or any of our panelists, when you're on VV ECMO and you're at a certain flow, what do you believe in determining that we're providing adequate oxygenation to the patient? What, as the technology is now, what should we be relying on, and what would you allow as a pulse ox saturation of the capillary bed moving as a normalization, as long as you're providing the oxygenation or the adequate meeting metabolic need, if you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. This is an intriguing, interesting question. So, what maybe question to you, or what do we mean with oxygen saturation? So we don't mean the peripheral saturation. We don't, because the peripheral saturation is a very unpredictable tool for ARDS patient. If there is a peripheral constriction and bad peripheral perfusion, you cannot monitor the saturation, peripheral saturation transcutaneously in adequate way. So for this patient, you may forget it. And there are two more saturation tools, and I would fully agree with Roberto and Matthew. We should maybe look for a kind of holy grail in monitoring tools, continuously monitoring, and probably mixed venous saturation would be one of them, because it provides a lot of information about metabolism, especially in aseptic patients. And this is probably for sepsis, for severe RDS, much more better than even arterial saturation. The second point is about the saturation in arterial blood gas analysis. We already recognize then even quite badly results are not so bad as we believe. So it means there are some, and for this reason, I believe the awake ECMO should be much more recognized as because we have neurological monitoring if the patient is awake. So what's better than a neurological condition of the patient? And this is the same like this latent hypoxemia in COVID patients. I mean, people tolerate saturation, very low saturation, and speak with us, and this is the same. So Karolinska is doing this way, and we learned from Swedish centers, from Karolinska, from Palma, that we may tolerate even the saturation of 86 and PO2 of 60 if the patient speaks with you. So what? Even better. And then especially in very prolonged ECMO runs, we need just to sit down and wait.
Are any of you using any type of, I mean, just a thought, cerebral saturations, looking at any kind of cerebral saturations as a tool for your patients? One of the cerebral devices? Jeff, are you using anything, or have you seen any centers using the cerebral oximetry for basically monitoring the patients during ECL?
You mean other than NIRS?
Other than where?
Other than NIRS, or you were mentioning something else? Because I think it's a lot of people are using NIRS, and thank you for the
you got Salmonetics, you got several different devices out there. I mean, there's several different devices, and they use it as a tool for measuring, oxygen flow and cerebral oximetry?
So we use NIRS, not in VV patient, not for respiratory support. We use NIRS for the control of distal leg perfusion in VA. Okay, but also not for neuro monitoring or something like this. So sometimes we tried so people actually use NIRS for prediction of the saturation after ECPR and VA ECMO and ECPR for also for neuro monitoring, but it's a very early stage of prediction tool. So it's not. I do not believe there is any recommendation for this.
Yeah, I agree. Although I must say, just to make things a little bit more funny, that one of my mentors said, just look around you. Do you see how many people are not using enough oxygen for their brain? I think that is sometimes something that we have to consider. I mean, just making this funny, that permissive hypoxemia, we still don't know. We still don't know the limits, I can tell you one thing. I discussed with one of the divers making the world record of diving at more than 100 meters below the water, the surface. And if I tell you that they go to 12 beats per minute of heart rate, would you believe? Do you believe that these guys go to 110, 120, 130 meters? And we know that every 10 meters below water, it's 1 atmosphere. So the cage, the thorax cage, is undergoing such a big pressure that it's impossible that they do not have a collapse of the lungs and so forth. And they still survive, and they when go out from the water, they are not completely, in such a hypoxic state or so. So, I mean, we do not know enough of the body physiology. We do not know which are the limits. I mean, I learned in my medical school that below 30 minutes of heart rate, the heart can stop at any time. And they go at 12 beats per minute. Just make 12 beats per minute and your clock, and you will be really astonished that this can happen. So I'm just saying that we do not know enough. It's like hybrid ECMO. We do not know what is the limit. We do not know if we are doing the right thing using some configuration. And the same thing is what is, as Justina rightly said, what is saturation measure indirectly, what is NIRS actually not measuring. We know maybe not precisely what is going on in the brain. So I think really we are at the very early stage of what we will see in the next future for technology, but we need to be really more sophisticated. We are now like sailors doing like this for the wind, and we really need to improve our monitoring way. Absolutely.
So, Bill, I'll answer your question in a bit of a different way. So I'm I think the only pediatrician on this panel, which means that I'm very used to dealing with kids with congenital cardiac disease. So every day of the week, I'm walking in, seeing kids sat in 75%, walking around playing here and doing just fine. And so my answer to that question of what's the saturation that you accept in a patient on VV ECMO is I'll accept the lowest saturation I can that chooses that to which they don't produce lactate. Or again, a better way to say that is the lowest saturation that they will accept that keeps their delivered oxygen at least twice their consumption. and whatever that is, we've had good outcomes. While I don't do adults anymore, we used to do adults at this center, and we treated them essentially the same way. I have a girl down the hall here right now who's sat in 72% with a congenitally normal heart, sat in 72% on VV ECMO, and is doing just fine. Was playing a card game with her mother not too long ago.
But Matt, I agree with you completely. I cannot again agree more, but you have to consider that you have a cyanotic heart disease. So these patients are used to that. So, but you are right. You are right saying that you follow the saturation and the development, of course, of acidosis. That is the combination. Then how low can adapted body go to lower saturation? We still don't know. And the same thing is, how is a not adapted or not trained body towards a low saturation go? And that is another challenging thing, because that will be, of course, can vary from patient to patient, for sure.
And there's a fantastic rabbit hole to go down in looking at hypoxemic preconditioning in these patients. That is a really set of very interesting data if you search through PubMed and on the web about, because there's some fascinating stuff there. I agree with you, Roberto. I think we're in the very infantile stages of understanding truly what the limits are. But I tell you what, it's a whole lot of fun finding out.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Payton, Dr. Lewis. So, that's one of the things that I see with certain groups is they may expect to see cerebral pulse oxes in the realm of 95 and greater, like VA ECMO in VV ECMO. So therefore, they're requiring the specialist to increase their VV flow to get it that high, where they could either be increasing the hemoglobin, or what they're having to do is increase the volume infusion into the patient to get to that flow, to possibly get to that 95%, which is, I think it's been shown it's higher than you need if you're on VV ECMO. So there's a lot of problems you can cause yourself by possibly misinterpreting that value if you're not looking at the end product or whether or not we're meeting metabolic need. As you suggested, venous sats, venous PO2s, lactates, pHs, et cetera, et cetera. So it's something that we run into often. Jeff, if we go over, there are a bunch of questions, Jeff, for you, and I'd like Dr. Payton to get in on this as well. People, do they have to do so many ECMOs to take the exam, or what's the process of wanting to take it? And then what I'd like you and Dr. Payton to talk about is what is the difference between what the exam might be from ELSO and the exam is from AMSECT at this time on ECMO. And I'm not trying to stir a hornet's nest, but I know there's been a difference of opinion on how we're approaching that, and I think we could bring it to light.
Well, I'll answer your first question, the easy one. The qualifications for our exam are described eloquently at the website. Basically, you need a medical director or an ECMO coordinator to say you're hired, employed as an ECMO specialist. There is no case requirement per se. We recommend 2 years experience. It's been our experience in the pilot group that that if you had 2 years experience or more, you did better on the exam. Dr. Payton, we spent time together at the ELSO meeting down in, where were we, San Antonio or
Austin?
Austin. Sharing, we showed them ours and they showed us theirs, and our approach were what you would expect: a group of physicians coming at from a practice approach, and a group of technologists coming at from a patient side job description approach. And I'll shut up right there. That was my summary of.
Well, so the first thing I just want to say, Jeff, is I missed about the first 5 minutes of your talk, but I saw the rest of it, and first thing I want to say is congratulations to have that many people take the exam in the first year, to be able to show the data that you did about validating all that. Absolutely incredible. And so I will also say I don't see a disconnect here between having two exams, and that is not something that I personally nor ELSO are worried about or concerned about. The goal here is to make sure that those folks who are sitting bedside are providing excellent care for our patients and meet those criteria. I agree. Some of the differences between the tests and everything. So I'll give you the first difference between them. That's the important one. Is Jeff's is available now, and you can go and do and take that exam right now. Ours isn't going to be available until this summertime, and so we'll do it. There's some differences in approaches to how we constructed the questions, as Jeff referred to, and how we're validating them and doing all that. But those to me are academic distinctions between them, and not something that really truly should affect the patient level and the patient care that is being provided. And so I think I think these will both be good exams. I think I would reference back and say that Susan was very on top of this 10 plus years ago in coming up with this, and this is an idea, because this is something where that our community needs, and the folks who take care of ECMO patients need, because as Jeff mentioned, would you say like 25% of the folks who took your exam were perfusionists?
So far.
Yeah. And so we've got a lot of people who don't get this training in ECMO, whether they're in nursing school or respiratory therapy school. And so, we need to, both perfusionists as well as ELSO and physicians, we've got to work to make sure that those people who aren't getting this as part of their primary training, that we know that they're certified. We know that they're getting good care. So again, congratulations, Jeff. It was awesome to see the result of what I know has been a lot of hard work for you personally, but for AMSECT, the bigger AMSECT as well.
I have a question for both of you again on the subject of the exam. I used to work at Eggleston Children's Hospital. Kathy Spitzer is there now, and I think the head of the program. She's a real good friend of mine. But as far as the exam, with your exam coming up in the future, is it going to have pediatrics on it, or is that going to be a separate issue in the future? And Jeff, did yours have pediatrics in your testing? No, it didn't.
No.
Did it?
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's a great question. We took the same approach that Jeff did, in that looking at where is the need right now. And the need right now, again, as I kind of talked about earlier today, was 72% of all the adult ECMO that's ever been in the ELSO registry being done in the last 5 years. The place and where the growth is in new centers, adult respiratory and adult cardiac is what we needed to focus on. So for our first test, we again took exactly the same approach as Jeff and our AMSECT colleagues said, let's get them knocked out first. And because a lot of the pediatric centers, especially if you're just talking about North America, are very long and well established. And so we thought the greater need there was for adults. And Jeff, I don't want to speak for you, but I think that was your all's thinking as well.
Yes. And the majority of ECMO cases are adult.
Absolutely.
Just as you said, that was.
So again, as a pediatrician, of course, I'm going to always advocate that be our next step, and that we're not forgetting our pediatric colleagues. But I think that's where the acute need was.
Thank you guys for both those answers. And again, both you guys are just such gentlemen and everything. And I've always wanted that cooperation between ELSO and AMSECT, perfusionist. We brought the groups together for so many years with combined meetings, which was really cool. Um, so, any kind of corroboration between the two organizations is always going to be, I think, beneficial to clinicians. I have a question that came up from one of my former colleagues out there. Lynn was asking, and this could be to the panel, for those programs that want to start an ECMO program, what would be your recommendations? And the entire panel can actually give me an answer on this. If you're new to it, or maybe you're not new to ECMO, but you're being asked to start a program in your institution.
Join ELSO.
Why does that help?
So I'll answer this with clearly my ELSO hat on right now. But so one of the things that we are seeing right now, and one of the benefits that that ELSO can bring, is we are seeing this huge need for new centers and new centers starting up. And there's a whole lot to starting a new program. I think everyone on this call understands it's not just about having enough pumps and enough oxygenators. It's about the people, the process, the funding, and all of that goes along with it. One of the things that also has just started in 2021 is actually to help out new centers who do this. And so in some ways you could think of it as you could think of it as starting a consulting business, that if your center, or you're a new center who wants to provide this service, ELSO is willing to help and talk with you, provide you all of the things you need, and probably also try and, with the experience we have from doing this all over the world, help you avoid some of the pitfalls that we know new centers fall into. And so, in addition to all of the other benefits of the registry, the collegiality and collaboration that we have, I think that's another way that ELSO can help and is willing to.
And if I may add a comment, which is somehow could be provocative, but I've been, growing up in the cardiac surgery world, at least in the adult cardiac. I did congenital at the very beginning of my career, but what I can say, which is quite clear and often to be found, is in the cardiac surgery community, I would say in many surgical community, you have some kind of sometimes of jealousy, some kind of super ego, and if someone has very good result in something, well, there are people just admiring, but other people could be a little bit jealous and not happy. Well, this is absolutely not the case in the ELSO family. Whenever someone has good results, everybody's asking, how do you do? Because they just want to know and do it even the same thing at home. So this is something which astonished me from the very first second I joined the ELSO family and the ECMO community. The ECMO community is such a wonderful setting and field and environment, because you want to know from the success of the others, because you want to bring that home. And this because you want to treat your patients better. And this is something unique, to be honest. And I'm so proud of really being part of ELSO and the related community. So I just cannot say more than thanks.
I'll chime in. We were invited to write an article in Seminars in Critical Care Medicine, I believe about 5 years ago, Dr. Shears at Mayo, and we did 10 steps to starting an ECMO program. I think step 3 was join ELSO.
Am I biased to say there should be step 1?
A little bit. Step 1 is get administrative approval.
You are totally, well, getting funds.
Yes.
That's someone who's worked in a hospital for a while. He knows exactly what step 1 needs to be.
Or getting the patients.
Dr. Akram, got a question for you as far as testing or coagulation testing. being these patients, we really kind of put them on, for days and months of basically, an intrinsic approach to circulatory, and even with COVID being a vascular problem with coagulopathies and everything else, monitoring these patients, it seems like, when you look at the overall testing and monitoring of the coag system, what is the best tool? Would the TAG be one of the best tools that you could use as far as monitoring these patients? Because it kind of gives you a full picture of what's going on with the patient, kind of a panoramic view instead of a snapshot view with other testing.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. So the TAG, the thromboelastography, has the benefit, as exactly as you described. It hits on the various stages of thrombosis and coagulation. So it gives you like the overview picture, and it might guide your anticoagulation better than just snapshot testing using other markers of coagulation, such as ACT or PTT or anti-TNA. Now, there are of course limitations, right, for all these kinds of testing, and definitely monitoring the effect of the anticoagulation. We need better understanding and more comprehensive approach that maybe like in the future we will be able to have some sort of semi-consistent testing that guide the treatment. The issues also that runs with those point testing, that there are the variations among different institutions when it goes to the laboratory assay. So if there is a perfect test now, I don't think so. We do hope, in the future that we have something. The TAG just give you the comprehensive approach, which I feel like, we could adopt mainly in the challenging patients, such as, COVID patients or any other patients who run into thrombotic events.
Jeff, is there anything as far as coagulation? I know you have point of care testing. Is there anything as far as with the TAG in your exam as far as other coagulation monitoring?
Yes.
Okay.
Dr. Swoll, or Jeff, you're always very cryptic about your answers, but was there something else you
Cryptic?
about that?
Well, the answer to Ty's question is yes.
Okay.
TAG and ROTEM.
Okay.
The
Thanks.
new devices, no.
Thanks. Dr. Swoll and anybody on the panel, we have about 5 minutes left, but when I go to different programs, I see weaning of VV ECMO by 3 different methods. One is turning the FiO2 of the oxygenator down slowly. Another one is keeping the oxygenator at 100% and turning the blood flow down. And a third one is something in between, hybrid. What are your opinions on weaning, or what do you do at your institution and feel comfortable with?
Yes, thank you, Bill, for this question. And as I mentioned in the presentation today, weaning is more complex than the interaction between the ventilator and the blood flow. So the main question which appear in this context is ECMO and membrane oxygenation more physiological than the ventilator and invasive mechanical ventilation? We don't know the answer. What we know is that I don't want to say the ventilator killed the patient, but worse and badly settings in mechanical ventilation may destroy the lung, and we know about this. So we know it since 20 years, as so many trials have been provided, and we know about the PEEP and lung protective ventilation, and we know then oxygen more than 60% FiO2 on the ventilator may be toxic, and so on and so on. So, and another thing, what I mentioned in the presentation today are the aspects about our survey we provided, and we included in the survey the questions about sedation, because it's of course if we are talking about the patient in the severe ARDS, all those patients are in a deep sedation. That's fine, but the earlier we try to awake the patient, I believe it's better for the diaphragm, for the neurology of the patient, for our neurological monitoring, if we may see the neurological reaction of the patient, and so on and so on. So it's not the separate question about the ventilator and the ECMO and blood flow, but what we never should forget is why do we perform ECMO, and we perform ECMO if the mechanical ventilation is not enough, or it's not helping the patient. So probably, and the aim is to enable lung protective ventilation. So what we do at our institution is always for the first to reduce and adapt ventilator settings to lung protective settings, like tidal volume, or maybe ultra protective tidal volume, and so on and so on, and reduce FiO2 below 60%. And then you can play with the blood flow and adapt it, and just to find out the best possible flow, but the next weaning step is in my opinion to keep the patient and more awake, to reduce the sedation, and then to release the invasive mechanical ventilation, and to try to extubate the patient on ECMO, and to give the time and to bridge to recovery for the lung. This is the process we provide and we prefer and recommend.
So Bill, I know we're running out of time. I'll give you the quick version, which is our center is a wean flow center, and so we wean their flow and leave the FiO2 the same, and that's what I do for essentially all but one patient a year. One patient a year, I make them wean the membrane FiO2 and leave the flow the same, simply to show our fellows and everyone that yes, there is another way you can do this. Science-wise, I don't know of any evidence that says one is better than the other. So that's the general approach we take. I will say again, because I take care of small kids, we do put a minimum flow rate of about 250 mLs a minute that we don't go below.
I believe it's another word, pediatrics. So we cannot compare, and it's much more complex, and probably the protocols for pediatrics are better because you provide your care in this standardized way, and yeah, it's also another way. It's another procedure.
We're gonna go to our 10-minute break. And I want to thank all our panelists. Y'all were outstanding. So we're going to take about an 8 to 10-minute break here and then get into our next discussion with Carla Mall moderating. So looking forward, take a break.